we live our lives between those two songs, one of need and one of joy. And we need each other to be joyful. When we are not against each other, we're not joyful. Sometimes I don't know where this stuff comes from, but it comes from, I think, the very essence of what we are. We are here for each other. And when we as human beings can find that part of us, it will be whole. And I hope that music and sound, the awareness, not only hearing it, but being a part of it, will be the savior.
In collaboration with Zoom, the makers of the Q2N 4K camera.
So Don, I'm really happy to be here with you. I cannot tell how lucky I am to have met you some years ago when I watched the documentary. For me, it was incredible what I learned. I couldn't imagine that you were so ahead thinking about how to put things together. Like you were 10 or maybe more than 10 years ahead of MIDI. Yeah.
Okay, Simone, I must tell you, something early in my life happened that might have been the seed or the spark. When I was in high school, close to my last year in high school, and we have a counselor in our high school. Her name was Ann Jackson, and she was going to be my counselor for me to figure out what I wanted to do after high school. If I wanted to go to college or something, and what field should I think about? So I was staying with my grandmother, Rowena Mundy. My grandmother and my grandfather took me in. I have two sisters. My mom was single mom. And so when I got old enough, they took me in, and we only lived a couple of blocks from one another. So I saw my mom every day. But anyway, my grandmother and my grandfather were both in music. They vocalists. My grandmother was a choir director in my church. So when we had the consultation with with my high school counselor, my high school counselor said, well, I think she said, I think Donald should be going into engineering because he has a high aptitude in math and science, and he's demonstrated in his electronics course that we taught here that he's really proficient in that area. And so I sat there and I listened, and my grandmother was saying, no, I think he should go into music because he's really doing very great with his music lessons, and everything is going well. And I think he should go into music. And so I sat there sort of torn between the two. But one of the things that my high school counselor said after my grandmother said I should go into music, she says, well, we have enough entertainers, and the Black people have enough entertainers and athletes. We need some engineers.
I see.
Yeah. So I think in the back of my mind, all these many years, is how to marriage the two.
Yeah.
How to marry the two, the music and the engineering and the electronics. And so I think that was the seed. Yeah. That was the spark. And I didn't know that. And I'm just looking back. It's hard to connect the dots going forward. It's just like
Yeah.
in the back.
Backward, yeah.
So that was one of the things I think that motivated me. It took a while. There had to be a lot of fertilizer and water, and so on that seed, or in the case of the spark, there had to be some fuel in there for the spark to have any combustion. So, and I think that came because of the people that I was so lucky to be introduced to. NAMM, and especially for NAMM, that's where I met so many music people in the industry.
Yeah, so I just want you to welcome to MIDI Talk, that this is our audio modeling podcast, and I couldn't imagine a MIDI Talk without you. Also, because we at Audio Modeling we are creating this podcast to share the experience we had and we have when we are in touch with musicians, engineers, musicians slash engineers and talented people like you that are giving us ideas, that are helping us to moving forward and to make better products. We decided to record those chats that we also had in the past, and during this terrible pandemic we decided to make those interview online. So hopefully we are getting out of this, but we still cannot travel easily, so we are still here. But we have the same passion that we could touch in person. So Don, first of all, I would like if you can introduce yourself, just saying a little bit about you for the people who don't know you yet, because introducing you for me is very difficult because you have done so many things. So I let you summarize better than me.
I doubt it. My name is Don Lewis, originally Donald Richard Lewis, but my stage name is Don Lewis, and I was born in Dayton, Ohio, to my mother and father, Wanda Lewis, and my father. Actually, I'm a junior. His name was Donald Richard Lewis, and I'm the junior. So, my grandmother and my grandfather, Rowena and Zach Monday, were my grandparents who raised me and nurtured me with my mom and my two sisters, Gwen and Rita. I went to public school in Dayton Metropolitan School System. I went through elementary school there at Wagaman Elementary School, Miami Chapel Middle School, and Paul Lawrence Dunbar High School. And there I was so excited with math and science. But at first I was in middle school, I was really interested in architecture. And so I had drafting skills that I nurtured, and I had a mentor, Donald DeWitt, who was my industrial arts teacher, and he was very wonderful. And then in high school, I had another mentor. I have many mentors, but these are the highlights. And his name was Samuel Ewing, and he was my electronics teacher. And I had other people in science and, of course, in math. The science and the math became, for me, were sort of abstract. And it wasn't until I had the electronics that I could it was like a lab for science and math, where I could take the two and put them together with my hands, with components and designing circuits and so forth. And that was the genesis. So I became interested in that, in the educational side. The music side, I was I had three piano teachers throughout my short formal training, which happened in high school, just about high school. And my first teacher was Florence Upshaw. My second teacher was Catherine Duncan. And my third teacher was Olga Gates. Olga. And she was the most inspiring because she was also a singer and she sang and played. And so I got used to sing. She would start out our music lessons and she would sing and play. And so I got used to that. And of course, I started playing in church and in my church there, the Mount Eden Missionary Baptist Church. I'm mentioning all these names because they might want to watch this. But I had such wonderful experience working with my grandmother, who was a choir director at the church. She was very nurturing and very supportive in my endeavors to learn music. And so I worked around a lot of musicians there in our church. Our church had nine musical organizations. We had choirs. We had kids choirs through the ages, and then we had adult youth choirs, and we had adult choirs, and we had a youth band back in the 50s. Yeah.
Wow.
And my grandmother was the head of the youth band.
So that was the way you started to touch the music and start to learn about music. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
What was the first time that you understood the connection between technology and music, that you made that link?
Okay, well, it all happened. I think it all happened in high school. Because at that time, when I was in the electronics course with Mr. Samuel Ewing, we learned how to build circuits. And the first circuits we built were very simple things like diodes, and we were working with vacuum tubes. I'm really dating myself. The valve, as the English would call it. And so we started out building a power supply, and then we built an AM radio, and then an FM radio, and then finally a television set. Okay, in the process, we had test instruments and so forth that we were using, like signal generators, okay, function generators, we called them. And then we had oscilloscopes and all this good stuff to test out our circuits. And so I'm starting to see what the function generator, you got sine wave and so forth. And so you're sitting there and you're looking and you hear, and it's not musical or anything, but it's a sound, it's a pitch, and whether it's, 1,000 hertz or, you're tuning up and so forth. And so all of these things are buzzing around in your head. You don't know what you're going to do with it.
Yeah.
So that's the reason you sleep at night, to dream about what you're going to do with it.
You were just thinking about synthesizers.
But I was also interested because our church had a pipe organ. And a pipe organ, of course, is pretty complicated. This was electro pneumatic, which meant that the pipe would be open with a pneumatic valve. So once in a while, things wouldn't work right on that pipe organ. So I would investigate. I would go up in the chamber. And then sometimes the pipes got out of tune. And I would go up in the chamber and start messing around with stuff. I was very inquisitive. I think that's why we are here as human beings, is to be inquisitive and to explore. And I was very lucky because a lot of times back in those days, people were kind of resistant to people exploring things that they didn't think you knew, unless you had credentials to do it. But in my church, I had a little more support. And so I was actually helping them understand how things worked. And so that made it very clear that something was going to happen. In doing so, this desire of hearing this pipe organ, hearing choirs singing, hearing musical groups playing for all of these different groups. Even in high school, we had a glee club, and I ended up directing the choir and glee club in high school. And so all of these things are bubbling around in your head, but it's all this sound and all the beautiful music that we were taught. The classical music, the gospel music, the spirituals, the hymns, everything. We had it all. And so I wasn't afraid of any of it. It was all exciting.
That is really amazing. I was wondering, oh, we have, wait a second, we have another guest that can jump in. Let me add to the stream. Here we go.
Oh, really? Oh,
Surprise!
that's not fair. It's not fair. There's two of you and only one of you.
No, I just jumped in to say hello. I know that Simone is going to ask you some questions, to speak with you about media, about music, but I wanted to say hello.
Thank you, and hello to you. And I'm so happy to see both of you because it's been too long to see. We communicate from time to time, but it's been so long since I saw you, and I just want to let you know how much I appreciate you and what you're doing. You're helping many people beside me to understand the essence of beautiful music and tools to do that. For you're democratizing it for those people who cannot afford to have a whole orchestra at their fingertips. You're giving them that. And that was always a dream of mine. And you guys, you guys have helped to realize that dream for me. And I am so happy to see that. I don't know why just wanted to do that dream, but obviously I was not alone because you were there.
Yeah. I think it's a dream inside of several people.
Yes.
So,
Also, I can tell that I watched with a great pleasure the documentary about Don, watching and learning about his journey. I found out that we have a lot of connection between what you were looking for and what we are doing now, because during your career you tried with Leo, and that is a live electronic orchestra system to bring together different hardware instruments playable by only one man, and that is clearly a similar idea that we have with Camelot, with the system that we have built only few years ago, but also with the idea of recreating the sound of an orchestra, of a choir, and the expressivity that are you using with your voice is extremely connected with the Swam instruments that we are making, and we never met before.
This is so incredibly important. I think when we were created in this universe as people and on this little planet we call Earth, each one of us is like if you were to look at a tree. The tree grows and it sprouts leaves. Every leaf has its place. And the beauty of that tree is not in one leaf. It is in the whole of it. And once in a while, the wind comes through and the leaf dancing, and each one is dancing. And sometimes they're dancing differently, but they all seem to be in concert with each other. And I think that is why we were put on this earth. For some reason, we have drifted away from the concept of the tree. The tree normally does not try to destroy itself. There has to be some outside force.
yeah,
Okay.
Wise words.
Yes. And so, and what we're doing, I hope, is giving hope to a very fundamental ingredient in the creation of everything. If we look at quantum physics, if in the string theory, where it is a wiggle, everything, even if you can't see it move, it is wiggling on some scale that is beyond nano. Okay. Working with sound and music is a very macro perspective of this micro thing that, or nano thing that's happening, but we can control the wiggle. That's one way to look at why music and sound is so pervasive, is so innate to our being, is because we're working with something on a level that everything else is made out of.
Yeah. Let's see. Right.
So all of this, to me, just opens the door and the light for us to be vigilant in pursuing how can we make this something that everyone can not only enjoy by listening, but enjoy by doing in some way, participating in this effort. That's all.
Wise words.
Yeah, absolutely. I would like that for sure we are going to link and to put some parts of the documentary in this podcast, and also I would like to move a bit the discussion to one topic that maybe in the podcast in the documentary wasn't explored a lot, that I remember that you made with Leo and with Roland, you make collaboration to build and to play the vocal processor like the VP 550, and I remember that was incredible how you performed with that. uh, I would like to, if you could talk about the importance of the expressivity, and what is your opinion about the use of the voice for expressivity?
I have this feeling that first, every human being normally is creative and is a musician. Not in a sense that you play a musical instrument, but we're musical. When you came into this world, you could sing two songs. The first song was of crying. What is a song? A song is a sound and a language that someone else can understand. Before we learn our language, Italian, English, whatever English we're speaking, we sang two songs. The first one of crying. The second song was laughter. We sang those two songs before we could say mama or papa. We live our lives between those two songs, one of need and one of joy. And we need each other to be joyful. When we are not against each other, we're not joyful. Sometimes I don't know where this stuff comes from, but it comes from, I think, the very essence of what we are. We are here for each other. And when we as human beings can find that part of us, it will be whole. And I hope that music and sound, the awareness, not only hearing it, but being a part of it, will be the savior. If music disappeared from the earth will continue, but our existence may not if we don't become in harmony with first ourselves. And that's what music is all about. I think that's why people love singing together. I mean, if you look at the ultimate expression without anything outside of ourselves, just within, when the within comes out from your voice or your hands or your dance, because this is all music. it's all movement, you know? And so when that happens, we bring joy to each other. We feed from each other's energy. But we will not let this happen. We cannot let this happen. This is too precious a time in the history of the universe for us to screw it up in our short time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I hope through the efforts of tool makers like you, making tools for us to express ourselves in any way we want, this is going to make a difference. This will make a difference. It will make a difference. It's already making a difference. You had some more questions?
Yeah.
It's difficult after this.
Yeah, exactly. Because now everything is at a different level. But I have some annotation that
You said something about vocalizing. So the vocal part. So if we get back to that part, I feel like musical instruments, I call them synthesizers, the conventional acoustic instruments, though they are mechanical synthesizers. Synthesize means something that is made by humans. So we take the tree, we take the ore, the steel, or the whatever medium we're using, and we put them together for guitar or for piano or for horn or for flute or for drums. That's a synthesizer. It's a mechanical synthesizer, musical synthesizer. Then the next evolution was electric, and that comes with like the Hammond organ. The Hammond organ was electric for the most part, electromechanical, and then we got into electronics. Okay, maybe a parallel with electronics or some, because the Hammond wouldn't happen without the amplifier. You needed the amplifier. Okay, so anyway, so then we get into valves, and then we get into transistors, solid state. Okay, so into the electronics. So we move from organic synthesizer, which I look at, and then because this voice is made up of three components of a synthesizer. I would say subtractive synthesis. Okay, so the vocal cord is the oscillator. The mouth cavity and so forth is the filter. The envelope generator is the movement of the mouth.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the amplifier is the amount of air coming from the lungs and supported by the diaphragm. So those, and then you have, and that also has an envelope generator doing that. It's a muscular type of thing. Okay, so that's right. Opera singers develop this very much. This whole cavity here. That's how they are able to project, and with vibrato going through and cutting through the orchestra. So I learned that from the Italians.
Pavarotti.
Yeah, Pavarotti. Gospel singers are just about as good. they project as well. Okay, so anyway, so looking at those ingredients tells you that for the most part, this is why we have extended the range of the human voice through technology. The musical instruments extended the range. The bass is lower than any bass a natural bass singer could sing. And the highs are higher than any soprano could sing. So what we've done with mechanical synthesizers, we are now creating another palette of sound and color that even extends it more and also articulates much more. But the articulation is the main ingredient of how do you create emotion from that crying and that laughter. Those are the two emotions that get us, right? The crying and the laughter. And how do you get those emotions to be represented in the envelopes and the pitches and the filtering or the aliasing that can happen, and all of the distortion and all of that? How do you get Louis Armstrong's and Joe Cocker and Janis Joplin's and Aretha Franklin's and Ray Charles's voices, how they emote that emotion? And then there's the softer kind, like the Frank Sinatra's.
Yeah, the crooner.
Yeah, and the Sarah Brightmans. And the Nat King Cole, the smooth, the smoothness. And so we have all of those textures that we can work with, but they all were originated in our vocabulary of listening through the human voice. And so when we compose and when we sound design, all of these things, even from nature, we can pull from nature the things external to us that still make sounds. The wind, the rain, the thunder, the lightning.
Yeah, I remember that you were making sounds with the synthesizer, with of thunder, of the nature with synthesizer, right?
Because one of the most exciting things that happened to me when I was a kid in Dayton, Ohio, we used to have, especially in the summertime, there would be these afternoon thunderstorms, and everybody would go hide. Oh, get scared. And me, I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the lightning and I'm trying, whoa, this is so cool. I was never afraid of thunder and lightning. I don't know. I remember one Sunday, my grandfather and I were walking to church from our home, going to Sunday school. In the middle of us walking, the rain started, a big thunderstorm right in the middle of it. And we were walking down the street and there was this paper factory that had this really tall chimney all the way from the ground. It must have been 100 feet high. And lightning struck that chimney and some bricks from the top of that chimney fell. And we looked and my grandfather, woo, like this. And I was like, wow. It was not frightening to me. I don't know why it was not frightening. Maybe that's the same thing that happened to Ben Franklin with the kite. I guess he wasn't afraid of it either. He could have got killed, but these are things that, with not even thinking about that, prompted me to want to make this thunder. But the other thing was what you saw was that was Wendy Carlos, her Sonic Seasonings album, the spring episode of the Sonic Seasoning, and she had these thunderstorms going on while this music was going on. Okay. And so I thought the Moog synthesizer was doing that. So I started, I had ARP. I was working with ARP. And I said, we got to learn how to do this with the ARP. Come to find out, it wasn't the Moog. It was somebody recorded this and integrated it and mixed it in. And so we did something first time with ARP. Thunder.
Now, that is really incredible because you pointed out something that it's also really important for us, because we are really proud to build instruments that are generating sounds according to what people ideas and musical taste put inside that, instead of playing back recordings of other of other players. So I always find the connection with your approach to music, with your research and what we are doing. And that is really important for us, because that is something that confirms that we are going in a right direction. Also, what I have noticed is that your approach is always a curious approach, trying to discover what happens, how things are working, and that has created made your life and your career so interesting, because you are really curious to explore everything. And in a very minimal way, we are doing the same thing. So we are proud to have this connection with
To
you.
follow your steps.
Exactly.
I know. Also, thank you for the compliment, but I want you to know my dreams are not sometimes are dreams. They are inspiration. And I understand that I have limitations and I cannot achieve everything I think about, but I can share those things to inspire others to achieve. And that's, to me, is the blessing. It's a blessing of gratitude that what I may dream that I cannot myself complete, because I will always need someone else.
Yeah.
We complete each other. It's all interdependent. You're no less, I'm no more. We're all together. I've been so fortunate and grateful for meeting you, both of you, and your partners, and people like Kakahashi,
Yeah.
Alan Perlman, Bob Moog, Roger Lynn. The people like John Chowning, work with some incredible musicians, but most of my work, like with Quincy Jones and Michael Jackson, but most of my real feeling for it's always been on the other side with the creators of the instruments. And I guess that's one. That's why many people don't know people who are creating the musical instruments. They know only understand the artists that use them, because they are in the public view. And one thing, when you come back to USA, you must come to the new NAMM, renovated NAMM Museum. They have done the best exhibit for the makers of the instruments. You're going to love it. You're going to love it, because this celebrates your passion, your participation, your creativity. This is what it looks like. Okay. And that's what most people don't know.
Don, I have other two questions. One question is maybe it's more fun, because it was very nice to see on the documentary when Kagashi discovered that you were playing with his drum machine, but Don literally tweaked, opened the drum machine and changed to play other patterns that weren't built in the drum machine. So
it was a simple thing to do after I got the schematics, because I could read the schematics. And back in the day where you could actually see discrete components, like resistors and capacitors and transducers and transformers and coils and stuff, resonators, all of this stuff. Well, you could see that, and it became apparent that he had a pattern that was built on 24 steps. The rail The rhythm reel was 24 steps. So you could have 3/4 time or three divided into three into 24 is 8. Okay. So you got all of the, so musically you could do this. Of course, you couldn't swing it quite as much, but you would have to go to 24. You would have to go to 48 to really get those. But now we just put a swing button on it. So like a knob. But it was easy to see that from an engineering side. But the musical side said, okay, so if you don't like this pattern, how can you shift it? And then after I found out which circuits were the bass, the snare, drums, the toms, and so forth. And then I looked at the switches, and these were like, oh man, like eight gains, eight bones, poles of switches on one switch connections. So you could go to these different places. So I started taking diodes because diodes only pass it from one direction. Okay. The positive side. So and not to interrupt the other stuff that's going on from the other places. So I understood that from my electronics course. So I went through and I did that, and it made my music a little more palatable, at least the background. It was I would call it a metronome on steroids.
Yeah, that I would ask you if you can tell to younger generation how to discover new things, because now we are living in a great moment of communication. So we have a fast access to information, but at the same time, it looks like that people are getting lazy because they know that the information is there, so they can access it anytime. So for me, it's incredible to see what you have discovered so many years ago, what you have experimented. So I would like if you can tell something to younger people, younger musicians, younger engineers, to help them to be more curious and to explore more.
That question is hard. I can only say this. Choose a few things that you can be passionate about. First, I remember, I'll do it this way. I remember my son when we first got our first computer, my older son, Mark, and Mark had just gotten the computer. I was working with Alan Kay. That's how we got our first computer, our first, Apple computer. I think we had an Atari or something like that before. And so, but when he got the Apple, Mark became very interested in it. And he started, he says, oh, and he spent so much time. He says, oh, this is really cool. I says, well, I said, so what do you think? He says, well, I'm going to be a computer programmer. I says, really? And he says, yeah, I really like this. And I says, well, what are you going to program? Well, I'm going to program the computer. I says, well, but what are you going to program? He says, I'm going to program the computer. And I says, to do what? To program the computer. And so then I understood he didn't know that the computer programs your intentions. What do you intend to do with that computer besides just programming? It's like having a conversation and it's going nowhere because you're not asking the right questions. And so I says, what are you going to program it to do? And he says, oh, I hadn't thought about that. So here is the thing. What are you going to do with the music that you produce if you're thinking about producing music with these tools? What is your intention? Are you going to be one who is inspiring? Is it an inspiring thing, or is it something that you want to express? that you desire, you have to do something that is going, if it's going to make a mark on anybody else's life, do you have an intention in here? What is going on inside of you? And if you can figure out what's going on inside of you that you think needs to be expressed, then use that tool for that. Yeah. Otherwise, you will be distracted forever because there's so many other ideas going on in the world. The computer actually, sometimes I find it a distraction, especially if I have other screens up, like if I have, a browser up and my email's going and I'm trying to do something musical. Oh my God, I'm doing something musical and all of a sudden a notification comes up. Oh my God, okay. You know what I'm talking about? Okay. Distractions. Yeah. So first try to be thoughtful and think about how can I improve myself by expressing what I feel I need to express myself. How can I improve myself? And sometimes it's about writing a song that makes you cry because you're mourning for something. Maybe it's the loss of a loved one or a friend, or sometimes. And we look at our world today, during this pandemic, we have millions of people who have died. I think about Brahms, Requiem. Write a piece of music that helps us get through, or make a sound that helps us get through. Sometimes it's a wail. It's not a cry. It's a real wailing, something to release that. I got to do that myself. I'm telling you something I'm dreaming that I got to do. When we look at whatever skills we have, all the palette can become very confusing and you will waste hours, days, months, years if you don't take the initiative to see what's inside of you. Everyone, when we come into this world, if we came into this world pure, without any things distracting us, we would be different individuals than we are by the distractions. I look at it this way. The first 20 years of your life, ingesting everything that everybody else thinks that you should have, your education and the whole bit. I mean, the first 20 years of your life, every idea. And then the next 20 years, you try to put all of that stuff to work. And then you find out at the end of that 20 years, or plus or minus 5, this is working or it is not working. Some parts of this is working, some parts is not. And then the next 20 years, you try to erase the first 20 years of all the things that you were told that didn't work for you. So then you become 60, 65 and you're ready to retire. Oh, okay. So those years, those first years are very susceptible of being ones of confusion, especially now, because we have, in my time, an encyclopedia was about a book, which was probably 5 years out of print and didn't have the up-to-date. But now you can go to Wikipedia, you can go all over the internet and find out stuff immediately, as you were saying. And so it makes it very hard to filter what is really going to work in your life. And what I think it is that you've got to be not only about you, you have to be about others. And when you become about being about others, you are actually being more about you. How would this make a difference not only in my life, but in others' lives? Is my protest song actually going to help the movement, or is it going to stop the movement? Okay. In the days of civil rights, the protest songs, they were songs. There were things that people could sing and march and singing. They weren't chanting, they were singing. The difference between chanting and singing is chanting only takes in the left side of the brain, which is only speech. Singing takes the musical side and the language side, the creative side and the logic side. And then you get more power. And then you get more people participating.
Yeah.
And you can sing. I know I would not be, I would not be here if it had not been for my ancestors who sang their way through slavery. They survived because of their singing. They sang those work songs. They sang those spirituals, and that's what made them survive. That helped them to survive. That's what helped our civil rights movement here in the United States, was the singing, the marching that Martin Luther King and others, John Lewis and so forth. I met both of these people. I know them. I played for Martin Luther King, and I roomed with John Lewis for 3 days at a conference. So I understand those rudiments, and I hope that the ability to access the creative efforts of you and others in making music accessible, that they can create this atmosphere. This is the atmosphere we need.
Yeah.
Play for Change is another one that is happening on the internet now. Playing for Change. And that is a great movement. So I would say to them, concentrate on something that you know that you desire other than fame.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good advice and good point. Also, I can see that you said something interesting about the importance of making something that affects someone else. That if you do for others, and that is also similar to a few weeks ago. I had to think about a definition of innovation. And the innovation is not only about a technical side, but in my opinion, the innovation is a real innovation when that innovation changes the life, the habits of someone else. So that is the real innovation. So I totally agree what he said. And Don, there's another question that it's also more difficult than than the previous one, but I have to ask you because in the documentary I have seen that you also had to face hard times, especially when the music union was fighting your idea, your innovation of one-man band, of Leo, the live performance orchestra, because it was considered a threat for the other musicians' jobs. So there were people thinking about that what you were making was going to reduce the work of other musicians. So this is another serious topic that also people that we have to face, of course, in a different way than you have done, because it was very tough. I can see from the documentary. But what would you say to people that are considering technology, also what we do at audio modeling, that we are stealing jobs for a musician? So what is your opinion? What would you say about that?
I think this is an area where people are fearful because first, they don't know who they are and what their place is on the tree.
Yeah.
And that when you take technology and you expand it, it's just like I told when the drum machines started coming out, and a drummer came up to me and said, you're going to replace me with those drums. I says, no, I can never replace you. I says, if anybody should be a programmer for this drum machine, it should be a drummer, because you know where the beats are. You know what stuff is. You know where stuff is. You should be able to improve the drum machine better than the drum machine maker, because of what you know rhythmically and what feels right. And he kind of looked at me and said, maybe I should go out and buy one of those things then. I says, yeah. How many times do you get called in to play a gig? And how many times could you use this drum machine to go to a gig without having to take all your drums? And how many times can you come up with new things and record those things? And how many ways can you make this drum do differently than the manufacturer could make it in this form? And in fact, in the Lynn drum machine, Roger Lynn says he never intended for his drums to sound the way that they ended up sounding on some of the albums. But the musicians went in and they changed it. And they came up with something completely different and something completely new. And what you are doing is giving a violin player another way to attack that they couldn't maybe humanly attack it, that instrument. So it's new ways of manipulating, so articulate. It's new language. It's like auto-tune did for the voice, and everybody thought that was, it was in a hit tune, so everybody had to, a hit tune. But the reason it was a hit because it wasn't just because of the auto-tune, but the auto-tune was the ear candy. It got people's attention. Your instruments, as you're designing them, are way beyond the normal way that someone can play it. You can take all those articulations and completely change the way that instrument's going to. So that's the innovation. That's where those guys have to do like I did with the drum machine. I go inside and you've given them the parameters to go inside and play with. So it is another creative tool. And it might even give them some ideas about the way they play the natural instrument. Hey, can I do this? Ooh, wow. So it's inspiration. It should not be looked at as something that is going to delete a job. It actually is going to create a job. It's going to create inspiration. That's the way to look at it. If you look at, there are two parts to that union situation. And maybe one of them was not nearly as explicit as it could have been. And that was the fact that it was not only that it was the union, but there were two lists on the union. There was a white list and a black list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was part of it. And I think that was a motivating part of it, because they didn't come after other people. There was another guy who was doing a different thing. Michael Iceberg. I don't know if you know that name or not. He had the thing called the iceberg machine. Michael Eisenberg, and as Eisenberg machine. And he did some things at Disney, I think Disney World for a while. But he and I were in Denver or in Colorado at the same time. And he used to play in Aspen or Snowmass ski resort. And I was playing in Vail before Leo, but I still had synthesizers. But he's a white guy. They didn't come after him. He was down in Florida. Maybe it was easier. And he was also behind the shield of Disney because he was playing on their property. But he could have been one of those people because he was solo. That's a part. And the second part of this is that remember when, no, you don't. None of us do. When the first recordings of albums and back in the 78 days, when recording came out, the union was against the recording companies because they said it would put live musicians out of work. Same idea. 70, 80 years ago.
Wow.
That mentality obviously had not changed. As soon as the technology is available, no.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's chaos.
Yeah. So that's the other side. So we have to be cognizant that institutions like the Musicians Union really were for organizations like an orchestra. Individual musicians by themselves, not so much. It's too bad that let's put it this way. In large organizations, it's too bad that the leaders of those organizations and sponsors of those organizations, the organizers of those organizations, those musical organizations, do not have the rapport with the musicians who are in that organization enough for them and respect for them to give them a decent wage, so you don't have to have a union bargaining for that situation. It should be something that's already as a part of a human being. I want to pay you because I respect what you're doing. I want you to have a life without somebody having to come in and say, oh, this guy is treating you the wrong way and I can take you in and I can, by getting a group of you together, now we can go in there and say, demand this and demand that. That would not be if organizations were treated as co-op, a cooperation, not corporation, a cooperation.
So, Don, thank you very much for your time. I would stay here for I don't know, for hours, because I had the notes about FM. You have seen everything, but I encourage people to watch the documentary because it's absolutely great. I couldn't imagine that was so interesting. Thank you really for your time and for being here. And I hope to see you soon in person.
Yes.
When it will be possible.
I want to thank you for the opportunity to be with you guys and to be a part of what you're doing. You're making an awareness of what's going on in the musical world, how important it is for us to know about the things that are going on behind the scenes that make everything else come to light.